Hello, good morning. Thank you for staying here on the AM show. I am Bernice Abubey-Dulansar. It's now time to discuss World Press Freedom, the most talked about issue right now on radio, television, and everywhere. And it's because Ghana has dropped 30 places on the latest ranking of Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. The country last year placed 30th out of 180 countries with a score of 78.65. This year, Ghana has placed 60 out of 180 with a score of 67.43. The report says government has shown itself intolerant of criticism. My guest will be joining me shortly for a conversation on this. Suleiman Abrahima, he's Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Liz Hefon-Asare is a media consultant, and Albert Jumfo is National Organizer of the Ghana Journalists Association. Before I bring them in, let's hear from the UN Secretary General who addressed the media on World Press Freedom Day.
Light on the essential work of journalists and other media workers who seek transparency and accountability from those in power, often at great personal risk. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, many media workers have been on the front lines, providing accurate, science-based reporting to inform decision makers and save lives. At the same time, journalists who cover climate, biodiversity, and pollution have succeeded in bringing global attention to this triple planetary crisis. But the threats to the freedom of journalists and media workers are growing by the day. From global health to the climate crisis, corruption and human rights abuses, they face increased politicization of their work and attempts to silence them from many sides. Digital technology has democratized access to information, but it has also created serious challenges. The business model of many social media platforms are based not on increasing access to accurate reporting, but on increasing engagement, which often means provoking outrage and spreading lies. Media workers in war zones are threatened not only by bombs and bullets, but by the weapons of falsification and disinformation that accompany modern warfare. They may be attacked as the enemy, accused of espionage, detained or killed, simply for doing their jobs. Digital technology also makes censorship even easier. Many journalists and editors around the world are at constant risk of their programs and reports being taken offline. And digital technology creates new channels for oppression and abuse. Women journalists are at particular risk of online harassment and violence. UNESCO found that nearly 3 in 4 women respondents had experienced online violence. Hacking and illegal surveillance also prevent journalists from doing their jobs. The methods and tools change, but the goal of discrediting the media and covering up the truth remains the same as ever. And the results are also the same. People and societies that are unable to distinguish fact from fiction and can be manipulating in horrifying ways. Without freedom of the press, there are no real democratic societies. Without freedom of the press, there is no freedom. The United Nations is working to support journalists and media workers everywhere. 10 years ago, we established a plan of action on the safety of journalists to protect media workers and end impunity for crimes committed against them. On World Press Freedom Day, we honor the essential work of the media in speaking truth to power, exposing lies, and building strong, resilient institutions and societies. We call on governments, media organizations, and technology companies everywhere to support these crucial efforts. Thank you.
So that's the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking about World Press Freedom Day, which was commemorated yesterday, and it was under the theme Journalism Under Digital Siege. So like I mentioned earlier, I've got very competent people joining the show to have this conversation with me. Suleiman Abrahima is with the Media Foundation for Africa. We've got Liz Hefon as well, who is a media consultant, and Mr. Jumfo, who is with the Ghana Journalists Association. Quite a lot to digest here, but we'll try and do that with the limited time we have. Thank you so much for joining the program, and let's just delve into the issues. Let me start with you, ma'am. we've heard earlier from Suleiman Abrahama, who spoke on Joy FM, saying that he's not surprised about Ghana's performance on the World Press Freedom Ranking. What will your initial reaction be?
I'm not surprised either. And it's taking a while for it to come to the fore. In the beginning, when Media Foundation for West Africa was calling on government to deal with certain issues with regards to journalists, I mean, nothing was done. Unfortunately, the Ghana Journalists Association was also very silent. If you heard about any brutalities or any harassment of journalists, you didn't have the Ghana Journalists Association come out immediately either to condemn or to solidarize with its members. And so it's not surprising that we are falling, because everybody says that it's a perception, but when you're seeing things happen, it no longer becomes a perception. And from the time that Ahmed Swale was killed to now, we've realized that a lot of things have been done against journalists and nobody seems to be taking it right to the end. We still don't know who shot Ahmed Swale. We still don't know what is going on to apprehend the culprits, and things like that just keep going on. And journalists go out for assignments, are attacked, and they are attacked by state agents, and nothing is done and nothing is said. So it's not surprising that we will fall that quickly and that low.
Let me take Mr. Jumfor's reaction also, if I have him on the line. Okay, we understand he's not ready, because I would have liked him to respond directly to the issue of the silence of the Ghana Journalists Association, because you're not the first person, ma'am, who is raising this. But let's continue the conversation. Hopefully when he joins us, I'll get his reaction to that. So with this particular ranking, the methodology was quite different from what is usually done, we are told, by the RSJ. Now, let me just run you through. So this is the list of the countries, and every color you see under each section represents something, okay? So you have the country, the score, the situation, which is their interpretation, the rank, the 2021 rank, and you have the political context, the legal framework, economic context, social context, and safety. Every color means something. Let's just come to Ghana, because that's the most important for us here. So Ghana ranked 60th. So you keep coming down. You see Ghana somewhere there. Okay. Just after Niger is Ghana. And thinking that Niger beats Ghana is it's quite interesting there. But the interpretation of Ghana's score is problematic. Now, the first one we have there is the political context. And you'd realize that Ghana has the bit of the brownish color highlighting that particular score, which means that it's quite a difficult situation. So if you see that color, it means it's difficult. If you see yellow, yellow means it's satisfactory. The reddish color means, that one means difficult. The light brown means problematic, yellow is satisfactory, and red is very serious. Sorry for the mix up there. So for our political context, Ghana is said to be having a problematic situation, and that's what we've spoken about. But there's something that we're all missing, which is the economic context. And in Ghana's score, that is our worst performance under the economic context. And we know how this also influences the freedom of journalists to do their work when they have to go somewhere and someone has to give them a little money for transportation and all those kind of things. And it's something we miss in the equation, the bit of the economic problem and how it affects our job. Just your quick thoughts on that.
Yes, and it has been over the years. I mean, journalists are poorly paid in Ghana, and therefore they seek to get additional, should I say, incomes through other means, and therefore that even go for assignments and would fight for solid, and if you look at that situation, then it means that when you go on assignment and the person is taking care of your every need and giving you something to top up, you're definitely going to slant your reportage in the person's favor. So it's like he who pays the piper calls the tune. And so if there's something untoward about a particular institution, because probably you've been feeding from there, and I use feeding in quotes. I mean, if that's where you're getting some income to help with what you're getting as a wage or a salary, you are bound not to report the negative side of things with regards to that institution. And when we are supposed to be reflecting society as the media, and we are not doing that, then we are causing more harm for ourselves and for the whole nation. And when it comes to the economy, once we are getting something and we are not painting a true picture, it will affect everybody. And that has gone on for years, and there needs to be something done. I thought at a point that GJ was going to come out with certain regulations regards employing journalists, how much they should be paid as a minimum and things like that. It never seemed to work out.
Right. We've been joined by Suleiman Abrahima, who is Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Thank you for your time this morning, sir. You have already given us your initial reactions to this report. You say you're not surprised. But I was just asking Liz about Ghana's situation when we break it down, okay, and we have it back on our screens. Ghana has a problematic situation in the political context and the issue of safety, which we've been talking about a lot of times. But our highest rank is under the economic context, which Liz has just explained to us has been a situation, I'm sure, since journalism started in Ghana, maybe. But we don't seem to know how to deal with that angle of the problem. How do we resolve this? The fact that the economic context for a lot of journalists is nothing to write home about, and it does really affect our output as journalists. Too bad. I'm told we lost him on the line there. So let me just come back to you, ma'am. Let's just move on with the conversation. We've also seen and heard government's reaction to some of these things. You mentioned it in your earlier submission about we've been told sometimes that it's just your perception. You know, we had the U.S. State Department reports which highlighted some of these issues and against journalists. We've seen even local reports being done about the state of the media here in Ghana by some organizations like the Media Foundation for West Africa. And almost every time, what we see is a resistance to these reports. How do you think this has affected our resolve to make Ghana what it was known for, you know, in terms of democracy and free speech and, you know, the free expression of media people?
We just heard what Therese say, that without a free media, there is no real democracy. And therefore, when anybody tries to stifle the media, or when anybody tries to take over the media and the way they should operate, then we know that there is no true democracy. Unfortunately, in Ghana, you realize that now, even in the media, we are split down the middle. Partisanship has run through us. And therefore, even if you're working with a station that belongs to some politician, you can't be objective because you're being paid by, should I say, the largesse of the politician who owns that media station. And so you are supposed to sing the tune or follow whatever policy that that media house has. And therefore, if you want to be objective, it is not your place to be in that media house. So objectivity seems to have been thrown through the window, and everybody is being colored depending on what you say and who you're talking about and who you probably are praising. So it's a difficult situation for journalists, it's a difficult situation for the media, it's a difficult situation for Ghana. If we don't move away from that, if we do not leave journalists to play their roles properly, if we do not leave them to be objective, and we think that everyone should be biased and have a color, then we are not going to be having a very good democracy, because then the media would not be playing their role rightfully and properly.
And I'll have you hold on, ma'am, because we have Suleiman Abrahima back on the line. Thank you for joining the program, sir. So I know that you've gone through this report, so I won't belabor the point in terms of the breakdown using the various indicators in this particular methodology. But let's talk about the economic context, because it's usually not factored in the equation when we are discussing press freedom, but it plays a very major role. And so you just had Liz talk about polarization, and this is as a result of the kind of people who invest in our media space, who pay the journalists, and so you don't really have a choice. How do we ensure that this issue is dealt with to help our ranking get better as we move on?
Well, first of all, I think in terms of the ranking and the economic and some of the other factors, I don't see how they have changed from previous years to now. Since the liberalization of the airways, and particularly from 2000, the year 2000, a lot of the media outlets in our country have always been owned by actively partisan persons, regional chairman, constituency chairman of either NDC, MPP, or parliamentarians, and so on and so forth. So that, to a large extent, hasn't changed. Every party comes to power and they parcel out frequencies for their own people. In terms of the economic factors, again, the challenge of how much journalists are paid and the sustainability of the news industry continues to be something that remains a challenge. And I don't think that it was different from last year than it is now. Indeed, COVID has had a significant impact on the sustainability of media organizations across the world as a result of limited advertising and all of that. But that did not get us to drop even in the year of COVID itself. I think what is accounting for our significant drop is the political context. And that is what we really have to do a lot about. In terms of the other context, economic and so on, the impact is to a large extent on professionalism and sustainability.
Yeah, but the report says otherwise, because they say the economic context is difficult. The political and safety contexts are problematic. So the report says otherwise.
Yes, I'm not saying that we discount that completely. Indeed, it's an issue. But the point I am making is that if you look at countries like Sierra Leone, that has become 41st from 75. And last year, we issued a report in which we were commending the government of Julius Maada Bio for improving the press freedom environment significantly. And not surprisingly, they moved from 75th to 41st, ahead of Ghana. Are we saying that the economic situation in Sierra Leone is better than it is in Ghana? My answer would be no. If you look at Burkina Faso, Burkina is now 41, Sierra Leone 46, I should say. Burkina is 41. The economic conditions in Burkina far better than it is in Ghana? I would say no. Niger is ahead of Ghana. Ivory Coast is ahead of Ghana. Cape Verde is ahead of Ghana. I don't think that these countries are ahead of us because their economic conditions are better than that of Ghana. I am saying, yes, it is a factor in terms of assessing the press freedom conditions of a country. If the economy is doing well, the economics of the media is well grounded, it helps in terms of what journalists can do, how far they can go, how bold they can become, how critical they can be, and all of that. But I'm saying that in terms of the factors that have accounted for our drop, because if you read the other countries that are ahead of Ghana, the economic factors that they talk about in Ghana is the same. But our problem is the political context in terms of why we have dropped. That is the major factor that has accounted for, our situation from number 30 in the world to number 60, and from third in Africa to number 10.
Right, Mr. Brima, whenever this issue of press freedom comes up, there are always those who throw in the bit of, but you also ought to be responsible. You also ought to be professional. And sometime you said, in the name of media freedoms, it has become very common to hear or see people baselessly abuse others on radio, TV, or online. There are pure fabrications, outright lies, and unsubstantiated allegations in sections of the media, and these are perpetrated with disdain. It is sometimes done as if to suggest that the laws of Ghana guarantee both media freedom and media recklessness. So clearly you identify a problem here, but you have in the past mentioned that, well, if you have a problem, you don't go the criminal way. Sort it out in a civil manner. But how do we also address this issue when it comes to media freedom, as you yourself captured, comparatively?
Well, indeed, I have had cause to raise concerns about our standards of journalism. I've had cause to raise concerns about dwindling professionalism, high levels of unethical conduct, and that is why, for example, ahead of every election, we do monitoring of the media as far as hate speech and indecent.
Sorry, Mr. Brima, I'm just losing you there. It's quite difficult to hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, much better. Hello? Hello? Well, too bad we lost him there. We seem to have a challenge with that line. We'll try and work it and get Mr. Brima there to give us his reaction to those who talk about the fact that the media brings this on ourselves when we don't do what we're supposed to do professionally. But I still have Liz Hayfron-Asare. She's a media consultant, still discussing this issue of press freedom in Ghana and how we've declined over the years. In fact, a UNESCO report says more than 85% of the world's population has seen a decrease in press freedom in their country over the past 5 years. So let's speak realistically, also considering the indicators, and I come back to the indicators because that is what cumulatively got us here. So they add all those indicators and Ghana ranked 60th. So if we take them and address them individually, then we can see how we can improve on our score. So I'd like you to take it one by one. On the political front, the legal front, economic, and safety. How do we deal with this? How do we ensure that the work of journalists are not stifled in all these contexts?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Hold on, ma'am. Apologies for that. Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Brima.
Okay, so I don't know if the question you just asked was to me or to
You can also answer that, and I'll take Liz's reaction after yours.
Well, first of all, in terms of the economy or the economics of the media, the dynamics are quite diverse. First, we are a third world economy, and yet we do have almost 400 radio stations broadcasting now, several print media outlets, multiple online outlets, close to 100 television channels on air. So one of the questions to ask is, do we have an economy that can support this kind of multiplicity of media outlets? And my response would be that that is one of the challenges. And once we don't have an economy robust enough, strong enough, big enough to service the media industry, what then happens is that you begin to see a lot of people doing the clickbait journalism, a lot of people doing sensationalism, just so they can attract the numbers to be able to either get online advertising or get offline advertising. So that's certainly one of the critical areas. And therefore, we need to look at which media outlets are giving us the independent journalism that we want, the critical journalism that we want, the journalism that really makes democracy to thrive, and how can we support them. But beyond that, if you also, getting into the political aspect, if you have a government that becomes quite intolerant and would want to use its economic power to stifle critical journalism, what then happens is that media outlets that would do well, that has the public support, that has the confidence of the public, are then stifled economically because government will not want to do business with you. And we are on a continent where about 80 to 90% of the advertising revenue comes from the state. Ministries, departments, agencies, and so on and so forth. And governments even actually have the power. And I'm not talking about the government of Ghana alone. Governments have the power to even dictate to some private sector industries where not to advertise and which media not to do business with. So certainly the economy or the economics of the media is a very critical thing that we have to look at. Then, of course, the safety issues is so important. If a journalist is murdered, national security is storming media houses, police storming media houses, journalists getting beaten, no regrets. And all we do is to talk about it. Oh, we believe in press freedom. We want robust media as opposed to silence in the media and nothing is happening. That certainly cannot help. When all of a sudden we are seeing the frequent application of an archaic law on publication of false news. And this is not my choice. This is not my word. The president himself, while he was in opposition, said that law is actually even unconstitutional. And you see the same person in power and that law is being used more than ever before. That certainly is problematic. Then, of course, the professionalism aspect is critical. But we need to say no amount of unprofessional conduct should justify physical attacks and abuses on the media. In fact, as journalists, we are human beings. And it is for purposes of regulating human conduct that we have laws in place. So the expectation is that when someone feels defamed, for example, that unprofessional conduct that was put out by Bobie Ansa, saying, false things about the First Lady, the laws are there. The First Lady could have gone to court to sue for defamation. Eventually, what happened? The guy and his station were taken to the National Media Commission. The commission sat on the matter and came up with a verdict that indeed what happened was unprofessional. The station and the journalist must apologize. If that option was there, why did we have police storming the place in the first place? So I think we cannot justify any acts of attacks on the basis of, the journalists are becoming reckless, the media are unprofessional, and so on and so forth. What for me is critical is that as a country, let us accept that we are going backward. The gains we have made, we are rolling them back. And we need to set up, acknowledge the fact that things are not going well, and collectively, we work towards improving our conditions. Because, look, critical media is required for a thriving democracy. When press freedom dies, democracy will die. We cannot say that we love democracy, we want our democracy to thrive, democracy is threatened, and then when it comes to press freedom, we say, oh, it's okay if journalists are being abused, if the media will be attacked, and so on and so forth. That cannot help us build the democracy that we want.
Right. Same question to you, Liz. How do we deal with the issue on every front?
Sulemana has addressed mainly all the thoughts that I had, except to add that when it comes to professionalism, there's a lot begging to be done. There's a lot we need to do. And so then my question goes to, is everybody who is in the media space a professionally trained journalist? And the answer is no. You have people that are picked up and put there because they probably want a job and then you can give them anything and they'll be in that space. Again, when it comes to professionalism, and I think that that is a major thing for me, the kind of people we invite for interviews, the kind of people that we have on our panels when we're doing discussions, has whittled down to only politics, and we dwell so much on politics, and therefore we call members of parliament from the two sides of the house, we call executives of political parties to discuss issues that probably have to do with the economics of the nation, instead of looking for some economist to come and sit down and tell us exactly where we are going wrong and what we can do right. And so a lot of it borders down onto us as professionals. The economics and the political, yes. And as for the political, like Mr. Bremer said, things that were spoken against in the past is what is being done now. And so we need to work at that. But again, I don't see journalists standing up for journalists when it comes to things like that. We just sit back and watch. And if we are not defending ourselves as a group, then who should come and defend us? If we can't do it for ourselves, who are we waiting for to come and do it for us? And that's why I say that GJA has failed woefully. Because I believe in all this thing that, apart from putting out
statements
of condemnations of the act, we should go further and make sure that the right things are done. And if we have the laws on the books, and we ourselves as journalists don't know the laws, then it behoves on us to study and know exactly what our rights are and stand up for our rights.
Well, you both have admitted that polarization is an issue. In her inaugural lecture, Professor Audrey Gajepo spoke about the broadcasting bill and the fact that we've been sleeping on it for a very long time, and also who owns the media, who gets a license, who approves who should own a media house. There's no clarity in that space. And so gradually we're seeing deep lines. You're either black or white, and that's how society perceives us. Even when you're given an objective reaction or doing a story objectively, you're painted, because that's what we are becoming. How do we, on the regulation side, because we cannot just say that, like Mr. Brimer said, we're human beings, there needs to be regulation. How do we ensure that the space is regulated such that we don't have this polarization, which affects us all, in the long run?
That is a difficult one for me to answer. I can't think off my head, apart from the fact that we can be our own peer pressure groups, making sure that if somebody steps out of line, we would call the person out. We are not ready to call ourselves out. And then there are those in the media who think that because they belong to a particular media house, they are better placed to talk about certain issues than others. I think that there also needs to be a lot of refresher courses for all journalists across board, because with technology and all the onlines that we're doing, you realize that nothing gets hidden. It comes out even before it's time. So there's a need to upgrade our skills. There's a need for us to be abreast with what is going on across the world. And if we do that, and if we act as peer mentors to each other, I believe that we'll be learning from each other and we'll be able to stay above water. The thing is that we always think, I didn't want to use that word, but again, let me just use it, because a lot of us are stomach journalists. As long as our stomachs are full, we are fine. And so we go ahead and do anything, anywhere, and say anything and think that we can get away with it. Again, where your foot is placed with regards where you're working, what station you're in, whether the station is owned by somebody who is in the ruling government. gives us that kind of false confidence that we can do anything and get away with it. And I think that it should not be. Our ethics committees are not working. Nobody is being called to our ethics committees. The NMC, like we have said in the past, it can deal with your issues, but it really can't bite. We have the law courts, but we are not prepared to go because the moment you're in court, even if it's a civil case, everybody starts crying foul. But then that is what we should be doing. We should be using the legal space to our advantage, and we are not doing that.
Mr. Primer, there are those who are of the view, though extreme, that politicians, political parties, political party affiliates should not be allowed to own media houses. What would your reaction be?
No, I don't think so. I think, well, politicians are citizens. And if they choose to own radio stations or media organizations, that is not a bad idea. Around the world, politicians own media outlets. I think what is important is, as was mentioned a while ago, a mechanism or a framework to regulate the broadcast industry and to strengthen regulation of the media sector. Look, we all know that the National Media Commission is the body that is supposed to do this critical work that we are talking about. The Commission, over the years, has indicated it is underfunded, it doesn't have the resources, and all the other constraining factors. That, for me, is important, that we begin to look at how we advocate for the Commission to the resource. But I should also say that it is not enough for an institution like the NMC to continuously say, oh, we are under-resourced. And therefore, then we see very, very little from them. The little that they have, what is being done? I have always had concern that, till date, the National Media Commission doesn't even have a website that students can even go there and say, okay, what is the mandate, who are the past commissioners, and this and that, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's important that the Commission also up its game a bit, even though we acknowledge that there are factors that constrain what it can do. I think that the Ghana Journalists Association is also an important and perhaps one of the foremost institutions when it comes to press freedom and the media in our country. Unfortunately, as we all do know, over the last few years, the GJ has not been in the shape and form that we all expect it to be. And I think that as journalists, it will be quite embarrassing that we who say we want to hold others accountable when it comes to leadership and all of that are unable to put our house in order. And so I would urge the leadership of the GJA and journalists in this country for us to all come together and see how we can really strengthen the Ghana Journalists Association. Because in the past, when you read many of the reports about agitation and defense of journalists, you would always find the GJA being one of the foremost and often cited institutions. As I said, I don't think that in the last couple of years, the GJA has been what it has to be. It's a human institution. There can be challenges, but I think we need to all work together to ensure that we strengthen that association. And as Media Foundation, contrary to what perhaps people may often think, we are a lot more committed to having a stronger GJA than people would think. We are strengthening the associations in other countries. So why would we not be happy to have a stronger GJA in our country? Indeed, we are extremely busy in other countries on multiple projects than we are here in Ghana. And so if the GJA is strong, it helps our advocacy and it helps improve the press freedom in our country. And I think we need to dedicate some time and effort towards that. So the regulation is important. The regulatory institutions, very important. But the NCA, which passes out the frequency, I think that is where the focus must be. The last time we were even asking them about the list of frequencies, they said they will have to do research to be able to establish how many frequencies they have given and who they have given. And that should tell you the mess in which we are in. So a lot more effort has to also be done at the NCA's level so that we can sanitize the airwaves airways for all of us.
Thankfully, we've gotten the national organizer of the Ghana Journalists Association, Mr. Albert Jumfo. He joins the program via phone. Thank you for your time this morning. The GJA has been mentioned quite a lot during this discussion, and we are glad to have you here to respond to some of the concerns. And the major concern is that, well, the GJA is not strong enough, you know. We've had issues in the past. Basically, all we've seen is a statement asking that, you know, issues be investigated. But, I mean, aside from that, there appears to be no other real work being done in terms of ensuring that press freedom becomes a reality on the ground. What's your response to that, sir?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, my dear, and good morning to your viewers. Yes, I'm listening to my brother Suleiman, my good brother. I expected that Suleiman will concentrate on Media Foundation than attacking GJA. But let me say that, yes, he is not far from right. We are faced by a number of challenges, and I can assure you that we are trying to resolve and put our house together. We are to fight for the welfare of journalists, and if you are not able to put our house together, how can we do so? We all know, even as we speak now, the political parties are preparing for their internal campaigns. They need the constituency elections, regional, and then these are periods where journalists are exposed to more threats. And I think that it is important that as a media organization or as a body, we come together, we put ours together, and stand up and fight against some of these pressure schools, some of these guardians and threats against them. So I agree with Suleiman on that point, but I can tell you that the GJ has done a lot. It is under the same GJ that clock first, or that actually caused Ghana to be the number one on the World Press Freedom Index in Ghana in 2018. Notwithstanding, after that, there has been a lot of threats, a lot of attempts to gag journalists in this country. We all know that after the repeal of the Criminal Libel Act, there's this act called False Publication Act, which the security agency is trying has been using to gag journalists trying to discharge their work. And I think these are things that we need to fight. And Media Foundation has a role to play. All of us, all the stakeholders, not only Ghana Journalists Association. But I can tell you that our contribution has been very enormous. That saw Ghana media or journalism clocked the first on the World Press Freedom Index in 2016. That's what has hosted the 70th or maybe the World Press Freedom Day in the same year. And this is a very good achievement enough to say that the media in Ghana has done so well until recently when we have come under severe attack. And the reason why this year's theme, which is journalism and the digital age, is very more important. And I think that we have to deal with the theme either than going back to issues of, I believe he may be talking of our drop from 30 to 60, which I think I will touch on, and I will give a number of reasons why I think that this phenomenal drop, is a very serious issue that needs to be tackled. But I would expect that we deal with the theme, the world, this year's 2022 World Press Freedom Day theme, journalism and the digital age. Thank you, my dear.
Okay, well, that's an interesting one, but we choose to deal with this particular issue today. And Ghana performed, our worst performance was under the economic sector, followed by political context, safety, and then we had some, fairly good performance under the legal framework and the societal context. But let me find out from you. Yesterday was World Press Freedom Day. What did the GJA do?
Yes, unfortunately, yesterday, as we all know, was usually the world in terms of the Islamic holidays, it doesn't fall on the same day. Some celebrate the holiday on the 2nd, others do so on the 3rd. Unfortunately, in Ghana, yesterday was holiday, and we, even in the world, most countries in the world did not celebrate the World Press Freedom Day, though the global celebration, which is happening in South America, Uruguay, went on. Most of the countries are actually celebrating the day, which is a working day. So the D-Day also, just as I indicated, we are also celebrating ours today at the Ghana International Press Center. There is going to be a symposium, a program this morning at 9 a.m. To speak on the theme, journalism and the digital age, and also to celebrate our gallant men and women in the industry who have fought for our press freedom and for our democracy. So we are not living this year's World Press Freedom Day unattended. It is happening live at the Ghana International Press Center.
Right, I appreciate your time here this morning. Albert Jumfo is national organizer with the Ghana Journalists Association, responding to some concerns raised by my two other guests, Liz Hefron-Asare, who's a media consultant, and Suleiman Abrahima with the Media Foundation for West Africa. Before I let you go, I would just like to take your comments on the RTI since it was passed. And also because we know that press freedom involves free access to information, and we work with information. Sometimes getting this information can be really daunting. And so a lot of times we pursue projects, pursue stories, and you have to shelf it because you're not getting the information you want. You would have thought that the RTI would have at least shored up our figures a bit in terms of our scores when it comes to press freedom, but unfortunately that's not the case. So let me quickly take your thoughts on that list. Since the RTI was passed, do you think that we have seen much improvement in the quality of our stories, getting access to information? There have been a few cases the RTI Commission has sat on and ruled in the favor of journalists, but just let me know what your thoughts are, Liz.
The RTI has started work, and the commission is in place and has been dealing with some cases like you have just said. I think that there's still a lot of education to be done on the RTI so people would know that access to information is a right. A lot of people have, in the past, held on to information, and I'm talking about those in public institutions, and they're still doing so today. So even if you go to seek information, they are willing to give you the information. But the information is not the institutions. The information belongs to the people. It's been paid for by the taxpayer already. So you have a right to know. And it will behove on those institutions to know that apart from the exempt clauses in the Act, whatever information you have, you should put it out. Again, if you're giving information out to somebody already and somebody else comes to ask you for the same information, that information is out in the public already. So I don't see why institutions are still holding fast onto the information they have. What we need to do as a people is to test the Right to Information Act by making sure that when we go for information and we are not getting it, we report to the commission and see what the commission can do. And so a lot more education needs to go out. Some education has gone out. Some regions have had educational and training programs, but it needs to be nationwide. Again, the commission is constrained economically. Finances are not coming through. You need a lot of money to roll out these things. And if you don't have it, then it becomes a problem. But there has been a starting point. The Media Foundation for West Africa has been very helpful. And so I believe that the Rights to Information Act should be tested and should be worked on so that it gains ground. And I'm sure that when it gains ground and people know that they can access information easily and freely, it will augur well for our democracy and for our development.
Suleimana, how has the RTI helped us or not in access to information and doing our jobs freely. Do I still have Mr. Brima on the line?
Tell me.
Yes, I can.
Yes. No, let me just start by saying I find it really unfortunate that my friend Albert, interpreted my comment of saying that we need to all work together to strengthen the GJA as constituting a disparaging comment about the GJA. I think that is a very, very unfortunate interpretation. I did make the point that the GJA is a prominent institution. We all need to work together to strengthen that institution. And the challenges confronting the GJA is not something that anyone can deny. Now, having said that, in terms of the RCI, I think it is one of the most progressive steps that have been taken by this government. And we must commend the government for its work so far on the RCI. The commission has been established. The commission has demonstrated so far that it is intended to enforce the powers that it is given and to perform the functions assigned to it as effectively as possible. I mean, so far, I have been very, very impressed and sometimes even surprised by how much the RCI Commission is able to do. I think that there is also a genuine commitment on the part of government to ensure that the RCI law works. In fact, last week, the Ministry of Information, the Minister, invited the Media Foundation to share our experiences with the ministry. And the Minister was there, his deputy was there, the RCI lead was there. And for me, it was a clear indication of the extent to which the government wants to see the RCI law working. It's quite early days. There certainly will be challenges, as we are witnessing now. But if you look at what is happening in Ghana now versus what is happening in Liberia, that got its law in place over a decade ago, Sierra Leone, more than a decade ago, Nigeria, close to a decade now, and so on, you would notice that Ghana is doing fairly well. And the indicators point to the fact that if we continue to proceed on the path that we are on, we would certainly derive the benefit of having the RTI law in place. Yes, government agencies continue to dilly-dally, we don't want to give all of that. But as I said, I believe all those are signals of the fact that it is still early days, people don't understand the law, what it will do, and so on and so forth. My disappointment has been on the part of journalists. And the fact that journalists are not resorting to the law as one would have expected. We have done series of training for journalists on the law in Accra, in Kumasi, Tamale, and sometimes in some districts. And one would have expected that a lot of journalists will resort to the law to get information to do their stories. At the fourth estate, which is a project of the Media Foundation, a lot is being done, and we are seeing the extent to which the RCI law can be used to generate information for stories that would sometimes reveal a lot of things that would be of public interest. So on the RTI, as I said, I think the government deserves a lot of commendation, but we all need to continue to work and help strengthen the commission, as well as educate the public and public institutions so that the law would work as intended.
Mr. Brima, before coming into the studio to have this discussion, I passed through the Joy FM studios and we were discussing the Press Freedom Index. And
I am struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm saying that just before I came into the studio to have this discussion, I passed by the Joy FM studio and we were discussing this issue of press freedom, but we took a different angle, and it has to do with how the citizens themselves sometimes abuse journalists, do not protect journalists enough when we step out to do stories. It reminds me of some time ago when one of my colleagues had to be pulled by a taxi driver into a vehicle when he was being beaten by supporters of a certain political party. Beyond the politicians, how do you think the society responds to the issue of the safety of journalists and how they contribute sometimes to the abuse that could in turn, make a lot of journalists fearful and prevent them from doing their work as they ought to?
Well, I think that one of the major problems that we have always highlighted in our report in terms of non-state actors taking the laws into their own hands and abusing journalists and all of that. That has a number of causes, but one of the primary causes that is often cited is the fact that when people lose confidence and trust in journalists and in journalism, then they resort to those kinds of abuses. And that should often get us to begin to reflect, how can we get the confidence and trust of the public? So that is number one. But the most important thing is that crime is crime, regardless of the perpetrator. What we do expect is that when crime is committed, the laws do work. When a citizen decides to slap a journalist, that's a criminal offense. And when it's a criminal offense, it is not for me to go to court and sue for defamation or something like that. It becomes a matter of the state versus the perpetrator. And so if we are seeing the state reaction, so for example, Kennedy Japan, who is not a security person, decided to incite violence against Wale. Months later, he's murdered. Then incite violence against Erastus Asaredonko. And then we had to petition the Minister for National Security, Parliament. We were invited by the National Security Minister for a meeting. We brought Erastus. Some assurances were given. But why is that Member of Parliament not facing the law? So for me, that is the problem. If individuals beat up a journalist, the law must work. If a Member of Parliament does the wrong thing, the law must work. But when we see impunity, as they say, impunity begets impunity. This person slaps a journalist, he goes scot-free. During the election, somebody was shot, a journalist was shot. So far, we don't know how far things are going. Latif Idris was brutalized. We don't know how far things are going. I mean, these are the problematic things when impunity becomes the order of the day. So when we are not saying that all these acts are perpetrated by politicians or political activists or national security operatives or state actors and so on and so forth. Non-state actors are also on the front lines of abuses against journalists. But the state has a responsibility to make sure that the laws work, to make sure that impunity is fought against, to make sure that people who perpetrate crime against not just journalists alone, doctors, nurses, teachers, and so on, people who commit crimes against them are brought, to justice. And that is the only way we can have sanity and ensure that our democracy continues to thrive and consolidate in the manner in which we all want it.
You mentioned mistrust as being one of the reasons people may attack journalists. What do you think is causing that mistrust?
What do I think?
What do you think is causing the mistrust?
Well, it is because a lot of people will tell you, well, we know journalism to be about holding the duty bearers accountable to us, making sure that our concerns are being addressed, making sure that it represents our interests, and so on. So if increasingly what we are seeing are reports and conduct by journalists that is actually intended to support the same duty bearers that the masses think that we would hold them accountable, and acts of corruption are not being reported, injustices are not being reported, abuse of state resources are not being reported, and all they see is MPP, NDC, this MP says this, that MP says this, minister says this one says use your brain, this one says you have square head. And those are the things that we continue to report. I don't know how that would attract the confidence and trust of the masses. But the people know the value of journalism. The people know that if journalists do their work and do it well, a lot of the things that are happening that undermine their interests will be addressed. So the cause for me is people not feeling that we are serving their interests in the way that they think it should be. And we need to therefore revise our notes and begin to work in a way that serves the public's interest, rather than the interests of those whose actions and conduct are undermining the interests of the public.
So just a quick observation here, and I'll take Liz's reaction to that, then I'll come back to you even as we wrap up this conversation. So you talk about not doing their work well. Earlier, Ma'am, you also spoke about the issue of professionalism. There's one thing I've observed. Enter many newsrooms in Ghana and you won't see somebody who's been doing this job for 25 or 30 years. Everyone is getting out of the job. There is this migration, you know, into other sectors, which causes a lot of deficiency, if I may say, in our newsroom. So you have very young people who are ambitious, who want to do the job, but you know, there's not a lot of experience, and even in the newsroom, there usually aren't a lot of people to even learn from firsthand. How do we solve this issue? How do we bridge the gap? How do we deal with the issue of quality? Because you enter other sectors and there's someone who's been working there for 30, 40 years with a lot of rich experience, you know, that influences the job, influences even discussions when it comes to online discussions, radio, television, and all that. How do we deal with that problem?
It comes back to the economics of the institutions that are media institutions. And Rima did talk about the fact that our economy as a nation cannot support the number of media organizations that we have, and therefore it becomes difficult. And therefore, if you have individuals owning and therefore running the media house, and you have adverts that are not coming to you as a private organization because you're not leaning to the government's side, then you have a problem. You don't see a lot of people in the media over very long periods of time because everybody seems to use it as a stepping stone to develop a certain career and then move out, because our media has not grown over the years. And you can't, when you get to a certain stage in the media today, you realize that there's a lot more you can do. But if you have a family to look after, if you have certain things to do and the monies are not coming in for you to be at the standard that you want to be, you're definitely going to look for something else that is lucrative and move out. And that is what has happened over the years. You have a few people who have stayed in for a very long time, but when you look at them and where they are today, you realize that because the space as the media as a whole has not grown, they don't seem to have grown either. They might be doing well, but they might be doing well on the business front because they are running the media organization properly and are making money as a result of adverts. Or they have something else on the site that they're doing, and therefore the media is not their only source of income. To be able to get people to stay in the media and to continue for a very long time, we need to build our media organizations to be strong enough to hold the people that are working there. When people are working in the media and they're not get their take home is like 2,000, when they have colleagues in other organizations that are probably taking home 15,000, you're bound to have them migrate. And we have not paid much attention to the media. The media has been there, the media has been working, but the investments in the media has been next to nothing. And you can't get very qualified people remaining if you're not prepared to spend. And so you'd have people move. When you talk about the new crop that have come in who are ambitious, they definitely would start very well, would probably get to a certain stage, and would also realize that they're probably being underutilized or think that they can step out and get and do better. So we need to build our media organizations and make them very strong.
Persons like yourself, there could be some mentoring program for young ones like myself, so that we can also be given some.
I could tell you what caused me to migrate from reporting but I'm still in the media. I haven't moved out of the media. The only thing is that I'm not doing straight up report.
Yes.
You know, and it only happened because I got to a stage where I thought that governance was an issue. I went and did governance and leadership with the mind to come and help build back the media. But when you come back to really build back the media, there's a lot that needs to go into it.
Interesting. We'll see how we can work around that, because the quality in the newsroom is needed. Thanks very much for your time this morning. Liz Hefron-Asare is a media consultant, and we've been talking about press freedom here in Ghana and the fact that Ghana has dropped 30 places from our previous ranking, now ranked 60 in the world. And we've just done a breakdown for you. Earlier, I also had Suleiman Abrahima with the Media Foundation for West Africa, and Albert Jumfo, who is organizer of the GJA.